Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 799. 799. June the 1st, 2019, Saturday. Happy Saturday morning to y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Another one of these days. There's so much to get to. I don't know if I can get to it all. It's a very thick stack. So I'm going to give it my best shot. Going to have to talk fast. Alrighty, my friends, here we go. Doug Collins has written a letter to AG Barr and Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz to confirm that the identity of the FBI agent who leaked grand jury material to the media and whom the DOJ refused to prosecute has been identified by Doug Collins as Peter's been stroking us. Peter Strzok, for those of you who are new to my channel. Peter's been stroking us, and he's been stroking us for a long time. So basically in this letter, Doug Collins wants to know why. And he wants to know about the criminal referrals and that whole process. So obviously he's, like a lot of people, very unhappy that Peter's been stroking us, like Andy McCabe can lie to the FBI, leak classified information, and do all these other things, and they seem to get nothing. While guys like Papadopoulos and Carter Page and people like that have their lives destroyed. Not really fair. And that's what Collins is pointing out, and I believe he's interested in finding out what the Inspector General, Huckleberry Horowitz, and Attorney General Barr think about this. So I'm sure at some point we'll keep watching Doug Collins. He does regular interviews. He's on Mario Bartiromo a lot. He's on Fox from every now and then. So I'm sure that there'll be follow up here, especially with Doug Collins. He's pretty good at following up on things. So I'm sure we'll get more information. We'll find out if he even gets a response from either Barr or Huckleberry Horowitz. Now, I just want to focus a little bit more on this interview that Attorney General Barr did with CBS. So I just want to go through just a few more things, the questions and answers on this, just to kind of highlight this a little bit. And it kind of goes to whether or not we should trust Barr and whether or not he really has intentions of holding people accountable, or if he's just another deep state player coming in to cover for the deep state. So let's just go through a few of these things and see if we can determine what may be going on here. So one comment that Barr makes in this interview, he says, it's just as dangerous to have law enforcement or intelligence agencies interfere in our political process as it is for a foreign government to do that. Again, it's just as dangerous to have law enforcement or intelligence agencies interfere in our political process as it is for a foreign government to do that. Very good, because this is exactly the point that I've been making, and many of you, of course, make in the comments section all the time, that there really is no difference. In fact, it may actually even be worse if it happens from within. We expect foreign governments to spy on us. That's what they get paid to do. That's what all governments do. They spy on each other. This is a fact of life. It's a fact of nature. It's the way things are. We all understand that. It's fair game. It always has been. We spy on them. They spy on us. And, each side does their best. And each side does their best to make sure they don't get spied on, right? So that's how the world works. But the way the world's not supposed to work in the United States anyway is that we have these agencies spying on American citizens illegally, especially a presidential candidate in the height of a presidential campaign. And here it didn't just stop with the campaign. Once he's elected, then it goes from a stop him from getting elected to a let's get him out of office campaign. And as Barr is saying, this simply cannot happen. And he has good evidence to believe that it did. He also says that the use of foreign intelligence capabilities and counterintelligence capabilities against an American political campaign, to me, is unprecedented and is a serious line that has been crossed. He doesn't say, I think it's a line that may have been crossed. He says It is unprecedented, and it's a serious line that has been crossed. First time he's really made a statement where he actually says it did happen. He said spying did happen, but in this case he expands on it and he says the use of foreign intelligence capabilities and counterintelligence capabilities against an American political campaign, to me, that is a line that cannot be crossed. And here he's saying that line has been crossed. He also says, oh, there was spying. But what was the predicate for it? What was the hurdle that had to be crossed? What was the process? And who had to approve it? Including the electronic surveillance, whatever electronic surveillance was done. And I want to know, what was the evidence? What were the techniques used? Who approved them? Was there a legitimate basis for it? I think we know the answer to that question, don't we? It's right there in my timeline. The answer to the question is no, there was no basis for it, other than they manufactured one. And they manufactured it. The perps, the criminal conspirators. Bob Barr knows all this. He's asked, what is the status of the Huber investigation? Uh-oh. He says Huber was essentially on standby in case Mr. Huckleberry Horowitz referred a matter to him to be handled criminally. So he has not been active on this front in recent months. So Durham is taking over that role. The other issues he's been working on relate to the rotten Reverend Clinton. And those are winding down and hopefully will be in a position to bring this to fruition. What did he just say? He didn't say hopefully Huber will bring this to a conclusion. No. He says hopefully we'll be in a position to bring this to fruition. Fruition is not conclusion. Conclusion is it's done, it's over. Fruition means something is being brought forward, Reverend. So essentially, here's another Q&A about Huber. She says, so Huber won't be involved in this investigation really at all. Barr, no. Then Huber's role is done. Barr, yes. And now Durham is going to pick up, and then Barr cuts in, says, yes, right. In other words, he makes it sound like Sessions appointed Huber in case Inspector Huckleberry Horowitz needed to make a criminal referral, and obviously that did not happen, and also to investigate the things associated with the Hillary Clinton and her, I assume this is all things Clinton, could be, he doesn't specifically say if it's Clinton Foundation, Clinton email investigation, pay for play, obstruction for destroying the emails under subpoena, destroying hard drives, things and such. He doesn't get specific about what Huber is involved in the investigation of Hillary. But what looks like Huber has done, or Barr has done, is he's drawn the line on Huber and said, okay, you're done as far as investigating anything having to do with the frame up, the conspiracy against the president, all that kind of stuff. Mr. Durham and myself and our team will be handling that. You just finish up what you're doing on your rotten Reverend Clinton investigation, and that'll be the end of it. So whether or not Barr has instructed Huber that, hey, you've been working on this Hillary thing, and we know there's some problems there. I'm certain that you're going to actually produce some good information, and you're actually going to do it right. I'm just assuming this is the conversation he probably had with Huber. That's what it makes it sound like. But he certainly took away anything that Huber was doing in regards to the SpyGate investigation. He's no longer a part of that. That's all been taken away, and Huber's basically done, with the exception of producing whatever he's going to produce from his investigation of Hillary. So apparently Barr is separating the Hillary investigation from the SpyGate investigation. He's letting Huber finish up all things Hillary while he and Durham work on the SpyGate conspiracy. That's what it appears to be from this line of questioning. Then Barr is asked, what evidence have you seen that makes you think that you need to take a look at this? What evidence have you seen that makes you think you have to take a look at this? And Barr says, well, I had a lot of questions about what was going on. I assumed I'd get answers when I went in, and I have not gotten answers that are, well, satisfactory. And in fact, probably have more questions. And that some of the facts that I've learned don't hang together with official explanations of what happened. Things are not jiving. Yeah, and he makes it pretty clear in this part of the interview that he came out of retirement for a reason. I mean, Barr's financially extremely comfortable. He was formerly the head of one of the largest telecommunication companies in the country. He was probably making a couple, $2-3 million a year. He's, quite comfortable financially. His career is already made. He already has been. He was in the CIA. He was already the Attorney General. He's had this long, storied career in the Justice Department and in the private sector. I think what happened here, if you watch this full interview, you get the impression that he is sitting back watching the coup go down. And he knows it's happening. And he looks at Trump, and I don't think it's so much that he likes Trump, I think it's more about the office of the president that he's wanting to try to defend. So I think he's sitting back thinking, man, somebody has got to, some honest man has to step forward. And he's probably watching Rodenstein and going, man, this ain't the guy. And he's looking at the next in command. He's looking at the Solicitor General. He's looking on down the line. He sees what's happening. And he probably says, man, I may be the only guy that's honest enough to go in here and courageous enough to go in here and fix this thing. And it's probably going to tarnish my career. I'm probably going to take a lot of heat. In fact, I know I am. But I'm going to go in there and get the damn truth and fix this thing. And I think that that's exactly what was going through his mind. He came into this job knowing good and well what he was facing, what he was going up against, but he seems bound and determined not to be deterred, and that he is going to figure out what did happen. And I think he knew what happened day one when he walked in the door. He knew it was an attempted coup. Now he just has to prove it. And what I think he kind of sees, is that you got to go about this in this particular way, because you don't want to take down the country in the process. You don't want to completely destroy everything in your wake as you come in and work this thing out. So I think he's trying to do it in a way that holds the perps accountable, make sure that for history's sake we know what really did happen, but at the same time doesn't completely destroy the experiment, you might say, in self-government. So I think that that's how Barr kind of sees himself, and there's nothing wrong with that. It may be a little egotistical, but then again, if you've got the chops to back it up, then I think it's warranted. So that's just my take, from my gut take from watching this full interview. Barr also says that there was probably a failure among a group of leaders at the upper echelon. Probably a failure among a group of leaders of the upper echelon. So then he's asked, question, so you ask the president for the authority to declassify, just what we talked about yesterday. It was Barr who went to Trump, not Trump who went to Barr. She says, so you ask the president for the authority to declassify. Barr says, yes. And also, the direction of the intelligence agencies to support our efforts. In other words, I went to the president and said, yeah, you need to give me full declassification and release authority, and you need to also give me complete authority over the FBI and the CIA, because they're stonewalling me. I need to have the authority to say, stop stonewalling me. Barr goes on to say that he expected to take political heat. says he doesn't regret taking the job. So there you go. Just some more thoughts on Barr, and I definitely think he and Durham are the right guys for the right job, and I do believe they are going to get to the bottom of this. Prosecutions and things like that, better than 50-50, but not 100%. So we'll just have to keep following this, but I can't imagine exposing all these crimes and having no one held accountable. But we just saw what happened with Peter's been stroking us. We saw with McCabe. So far, these guys are not paying any criminal or paying any price for their criminal activity. So we certainly hope to see something different in the future. Trump's approval rating is now the highest it has ever been. He is now sitting at 52%. That's 5% higher than Obama was at this time in his first term in his administration. 71% view the economy is very strong. Over 60%, close to 65%, give the president credit for that. Wow. That's pretty good. Don't know if you heard this or not, but the New York Times has banned their reporters from appearing on Rachel Madcow's show, Lawrence O'Donnell's show, or Don Lemon's show because of their partisanship. I predict that it will be the New York Times that will be the first one to flip the script, and we're already seeing the beginnings of that. They're already starting to flip the script. And once the New York Times disposes of the Russia hoax and admits, the whole thing, it was probably just a big hoax, just like Trump said, and what's really going on here, it looks like there actually was a coup. The president's right. And when the New York Times comes out and starts writing those stories, that's when the worm will absolutely have turned, and the other media organizations will have no choice but to follow suit. They'll go kicking and screaming, but they'll have no choice, or they'll be out of business. Just a matter of time, and we're getting very close. The transcripts from the Devin Nunes Intelligence Committee, when Nunes was head of the Intelligence Committee before the midterms, has been going through a review process by the ODNI for the past 8 months, and the review is nearly complete. There were 73 witnesses who were interviewed, including Mr. Potato Head John Brennan, the unwitting idiot James Clapper, Susan Rice, Samantha Powers, and including David Kramer. They were of the 53 or 73 witnesses that were interviewed. Nunes, Meadows, and Jordan are now pushing for the review to be completed, at which time these documents will be released. So that's coming up in addition to Horowitz. And there's supposed to be a separate Comey thing coming out. So we will have to see what happens there. Yes. Well, here you go. Here comes another contestant for Dumbass of the Week. Probably more like Shithead of the Week. Maybe we need a Shithead of the Week award. So, while discussing impeachment on The View, Megan Magoo said, quote, "If you take this kill shot, Democrats, you better not miss. You better hit his jugular. If there is still a finger moving at the end of it, you will ruin your chances in 2020. You better do this well if you're going to do it." And then, after making that statement, then she tries to take it back. Oh, I didn't mean that literally, like, actually killing the president. No, of course you didn't. She knew exactly the language she was using and why she was using it. And she knew that she was going to be heavily reprimanded for it. So she went ahead and spat it out and then quickly tried to walk it back. But once you've got it out there, it's out there. Of course, many of you know, as you can see perfectly well with your own eyes, that Megan Magoo, certainly not missing any meals. She's the spitting image of her horribly corrupt, traitorous father, who unfortunately died, so he'll never have to face justice. But I'll tell you one thing. When everything comes out, when it's all out there, we will see clearly the role that Senator Magoo played in the coup, and it was a major one. Major one. There's much more to learn about Magoo's involvement, because a lot of this Ukraine stuff that's still not quite been meshed into the whole plot. Remember, it was his boy, David Kramer, who was over in Ukraine with Alexandria Chalupa, fomenting all that stuff that was happening in Ukraine. Senator Magoo's role in all this is greater than is currently known. It is going to be exposed, and it will be documented for history, for all to see. Megan Magoo, the Hefford of The View, needs to keep her mouth shut, because it's going to come back and bite her in her big, fat, white ass. And McCabe is now backing down from the claims that Trump is a Russian asset in an interview he did on PMSNBC. And the way that he's spinning things now is he kind of admitted that he and Comey's decision to investigate Trump may have been an error. Oops. We made a boo-boo. Oops, we made a boo-boo. Trump and Comey. Nope, McCabe and Comey made a boo-boo. Yes, it's just a little error. Yes, just a little error. You launched a counterintelligence operation against the president, tried to destroy him and everyone around him. When that failed, you went for the coup. Just an error. It happens all the time, you know, like knocking over a glass of milk at the dinner table, tripping over your rake in the yard, peeing on the toilet seat. You know, these things happen all the time. They're called errors. But there's things called forced errors, and there's things called crimes, and there's things called treason. Pretty soon we're going to be having a conversation about how to differentiate between errors and forced errors, and investigations and coup plots, and Russians and real FBI informants, and all the rest. It's coming, Andy. Uh-oh. Look what we have here. More stories in the Italian press. I can't speak Italian or read Italian papers, but fortunately there are people who can. One of them is Mrs. Papagalopoulos, and she reads the Italian press every day. So there are more stories in the Italian press that the intel heads, of which I believe there were 6 that were removed, fired, was because of their role in the plot to remove President Trump. It's being reported in the Italian papers that these intelligence officials were removed because of their role in the plot against Trump. Now, it looks like the head of the left-wing party in Italy, which is kind of like our Demo-Commie party, Matteo Renzi, may now be stepping down for the same reason. Now, we've had multiple news reports in the last week about the curious and suspicious meetings between Renzi and Obama in the final weeks and months of his administration. There's a lot of stories coming out in the Italian press talking about this relationship that Obama had with Renzi, particularly in the final months of Obama's presidency, including Renzi coming to Obama's final farewell dinner, having private conversations, being given certain benefits that are somewhat unusual. It's for all these reasons that they're starting to question whether or not he too was part of the plot. And the fact is, these intelligence officials were under his authority at the time. So if they were dirty, he's probably dirty too. In other words, the noose is tightening, and you got to wonder who set all this in motion. And I think it was Trump. He called right after Papadopoulos tweeted out this stuff about what he and his wife was reading in the Italian press, and about them putting up Misfit, knowing that Misfit was living in Rome, Italy, in a house that's owned by the group who owns Link University, which is tied to all these Italian officials and intelligence officials. That's when Trump picked up the phone and called this Italian prime minister, the new one. And apparently, since that phone call happened, all this stuff is going down. So the Italian government realizes you don't want to be on the bad side of Trump. And again, like I talked about yesterday, if you know that the shit is going to hit the fan, you want to get out ahead of it. And if you were in any way, shape, or form, your government was one of the ones involved in the coup plot, then, especially if it was your predecessor, and your political rival, you want to come out and clear the air. You want to cooperate with the new president. You want to get on his good side, and you want to, at the same time, damage your political enemies. So it's an opportunity here for some of these people, and I think the new Italian prime minister is taking full advantage, and Trump knows this quite well. He understands how the game is played. So it's also, we are now learning that Bill Priestap, that's right, Bill Priestap, the boss of Peter Strokinus, and essentially almost an equal to McCabe, we're learning that Bill Priestap met with Italian intelligence officials at least once, possibly more, during the summer of 2016. And we're talking about the same ones who were fired. Priestap, he was also in London when the Halper Papadopoulos meeting occurred. And then in that same week, right after that, Peter Strokinus and Lisa Page, along with a couple other FBI agents that have not yet been named, met with Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. So here's Strzok and his boss, Priestap, meeting with Halper and Downer during that 2 to 3 week period when these operations, these frame-up operations were in play. And now we find out that Priestap was in Italy, meeting with the very intelligence officials accused of being part of the plot, who have just been fired. That's where he was on at least one, possibly more than one occasion. My. Priestap's a shady-ass character, man. He's kind of remained back in the shadows, away from the main spotlight, but his name continues to pop up time and time again. And we continue, if we remember, looking back at this Strzok page text, and there's many, many more texts that will be released from Peter Strokinus and Lisa Page. We've only seen a small percentage. There's much more. But from just what we've seen, Priestap, Peter Strokinus is pretty often referring to that fact that they have to go through Bill. They're waiting for Bill. They need to talk to Bill. They're waiting for response from Bill, approval from Bill. They need to take this to Bill. So he's really in a lot of the conversations between Peter Strokinus and Lisa Page. He's tried to place himself like on the outside, but we know that he was a lot more involved than what's been known up to this point. And I do believe he is certainly one of the people that should be lawyering up. We have Rudy Giuliani going on Fox News, and man, he is really, really into this Ukraine thing. He will not let it go. He keeps wanting to bring the subject back to Ukraine, even when someone tries to get him off the topic because they're either not interested or being told not to talk about it or what, I don't know. But he's on Fox, And he keeps going back to this thing, and he literally lays out this entire case in a very solid way, the way a good prosecutor would. And of course, we know Giuliani was a top-notch prosecutor, very courageous prosecutor, of course, went after all those mobsters in New York. So he says that he is still investigating. So apparently Giuliani is doing his own investigation. He's investigating the Biden's case, and he's laid out the case very convincingly for both extortion and bribery against Joe Biden, and he exposes Hunter Biden's corruption in the process. It's very, very compelling, the way he lays out the facts, the timeline, the events that occurred and how they occurred and why they occurred and to whose benefit. It's very solid. It's like an opening statement that a lawyer or a prosecutor would make when prosecuting a case. He essentially does his opening statement right there on Fox. And if he has the evidence, and I believe he probably does, to back up his case, my guess is he's going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing on this until eventually, and remember, he's the president's lawyer, he's going to keep pushing on this. I get the impression that Giuliani doesn't like that not enough people are talking about the Ukraine role in the coup plot, which is critical, absolutely critical, and also on the separate issue of how it relates to Biden and his corruption. So Giuliani is one of them. He's like a pit bull type. Once he gets locked onto something, he doesn't spit it out. He doesn't spit it out. He stays on it until it's gone. It appears that the North Korean officials who were in charge of the nuclear summit with Trump have been executed after the summit failed. They were supposed to get the sanctions lifted, and they failed to do that, and therefore it appears they have been executed. It's just unclear at this point whether they were executed by firing squad or by flamethrower. There seems to be some dispute whether it was the firing squad or the flamethrower. So it was the main guy, the guy that you see pictured all the time next to Kim Jong-un at these summits, and particularly you see the one photo that was the main photo they used in the last meeting with Pompeo, and Pompeo standing there with the smiling, greeting, shaking hands with this individual. He has now been executed along with 4 other individuals. The only question is, was it the flamethrower or the firing squad? That's who Trump's negotiating with. That's Kim Jong-un. That's North Korea. That's the commies. That's the commies. You better believe it. You better believe it. Those of us who are old enough to remember the Cold War and the Soviet Union, especially those of us who were in the military and dealt with these people personally, this is what we try to get across to the young social justice warriors, that they don't understand about this particular group of people. This is how they play. And the Russians did just that, as bad as that, if not worse. Andy McCarthy wrote an op-ed where he says that Brennan is lying about his so-called secret source. And he lays out a great article. It's a really good article, as McCarthy articles usually are. Sometimes they're kind of long. This one's not as long as most, but he lays out a very convincing argument that this so-called secret source, and the reason that Brennan is freaking out so much about this source possibly being outed as a result of the declassification, is it may just turn out to be that super secret source was no one other than Christopher Steele, or possibly the dossier material that's accredited to Chrissy Steele. For a very long time, I've been saying there were no Russians, there were no Russians, there were no Russians. Finally, we have Devin Nunes on Fox yesterday says Mueller has no Russians except for the Fusion GPS Russians, the Clinton Russians, and possibly the Dirty Cops Russians. Those are the only Russians that Mueller has that show connections to the Trump campaign. Thank you very much. I've been vindicated once again. There were no Russians. You guys have a good morning. See you tomorrow. Bye.